partying and I don't know, I guess a lot of times they just hit back, you know, to real life and just couldn't do the readjustment. But, you know, I see things like, you know, Adrian Adonis. And, you know, when Adrian was running with Jesse Ventura, he was the guy that, you know, was the staple of the East-West connection. You know, Adrian Adonis and Jesse Ventura were teamed up for a long time. And, you know, there were years and years and years where we would be on the road partying. You know, we'd end up in the room drinking and smoking pot and doing coke and just all kind of ridiculous behavior back in the early 80s, you know. And Adrian Adonis had a heart of gold. He had a beautiful wife and beautiful children and just to see him get killed in a car wreck. I mean, you know, Adrian was straightening his life out. He lost a ton of weight. He was doing single matches in Japan. He was on the road in Canada, you know, wrestling. He died in a car wreck. So, I mean, it's just amazing, you know, how short life is and how valuable, you know, your time here is. So, you know, there's tragedy after tragedy. I'm looking at Rick McGraw. He was living with me, you know, in New Haven, Connecticut. Rick McGraw and Stan Hansen were living in my apartment. And about a year after I moved away, you know, he passed away. You know, you got Kerry Von Erich and his whole family. You know, he had 4 or 5 brothers that all committed suicide. Lacey Von Erich, she's as good as gold. She's working with us now. I was good friends with her father, Kerry Von Erich. And I remember coming back on a plane from Japan with Kerry, and we talked for hours. We talked for 11 hours on the flight from Tokyo, Narita Airport to LAX. And we talked about his brothers and talked about how they died and how tragic it was. And he had this beautiful daughter, a little girl that, I'll never commit suicide to Hulk Hogan. I'll never, you know, get myself in that position, you know. And the guy was all full of love and he was all full of youth. And, you know, he was nothing but respect to anybody. And then about 3 days later, you know, I found out that he drove to the end of his father's property and took a .44 Magnum and blew his chest open. I mean, it's just tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. Bam Bam Bigelow. I was at home and Bam Bam Bigelow was here up in Newport Richey, a few miles north of my home in Clearwater. We talked on the phone the week before, talked about getting together, you know, talked about Sir Oliver Humperdinck, the wrestling manager from Florida who first got me pointed in the right direction, then became Bam Bam's manager. We were just talking about, you know, hooking up because he lived so close and he was trying to get his life started over. They found him face down, you know. We all know the Chris Benoit situation. You know, I'm sitting here looking at the big boss man. I'm looking at Mike Awesome. My brother's son, Michael Balea, Horace Hogan. Mike Awesome was his nephew. Went through a horrible divorce. You know, had just terrible, terrible situations with his children and his ex-wife. You know, they found him, you know, hanging, you know, in his apartment. It just saddens me. It goes on and on and on. I could talk about Kurt Hennig, who came down to work an independent show for Jimmy Hart that made Jimmy put him in a hotel room away from all the boys, you know, because he didn't want to be part of the partying, didn't want to be part of the craziness, you know. And behind the scenes, you know, one wrestler came in and brought a ton of cocaine, you know, I don't mean a ton of cocaine, but some cocaine, and another wrestler came in and brought him some somas, and the next thing you know, we got another death on our hands. You know, Hawk was a great friend of mine. You know, we all know what happened to him. Sherry Martel just blew me away. I don't even know the reason for her death, but the rumor was Oxycontins. I don't even know if that's true. You know, the list goes on and on and on. You know, we had a good buddy here that was always in Tampa, and he was from Canada. His name was Test. And, you know, he passed away. It's just horrible. You know, I just pray to God that, it stops. I think the death that was probably the hardest on me was, Andre the Giant, you know, because for many years, he really didn't like me, and he would just beat the crap out of me. He'd pick me up by my tights like it was a diaper and parade me around the ring, and my balls would be hanging out one side of my shorts, and I'd be trying to cover up, and he'd tie my neck in the bottom rope, twist my neck in the bottom rope and second rope, and use his foot to choke me out, and it was nightmare after nightmare with Andre. You know, I just used to get sick to my stomach when I knew I had to wrestle him. Then we switched gears. Spending so much time in Japan, we became friends. And when he passed away, you know, he told me he was going over to France to see his father because his father was sick. And Frenchie Martin, who was a referee in Tampa, I'm sorry, not Frenchie Bernard, who was a referee in Tampa, you know, was handling Andre's estate, and Andre put all of his belongings and his trust and all of his money in Frenchie's hands before he left. And I thought it was kind of weird. A few days later, when Andre's dad passed, Andre passed away. So, kabuki-ish to no extent. It's just one after another. I pray to God that it stops. Wrestling's a great sport. It's a lot of fun, and these guys need to just keep pushing in the right way. Let's go to more emails. Natalie in Maine. Were you ever a cheater with all your good-looking girls? Who were your fans of the 80s and 90s? Cheaters. Well, I guess you could call me a cheater when you get caught red-handed. My ex-wife, had somebody tell her specific details, tell her who I was hanging with. And, I don't put the blame on anybody else. I'm accountable. I'm responsible for it. But, yeah, I guess you could say and brand me with the word cheater. But I'm going to do everything in my power. You know what? I just can't imagine, hanging with the girl I'm with now, Jennifer. Things are so good, and she's so positive, she's so happy, she's so loving. It's just not even in my mindset. So, it's not in the DNA right now. I just can't even imagine that happening again. But wow, that's a tough one to look at. Line 1, Tony, Philly. What up, brother?
Hello.
What's up, dude?
How you doing, Mr. Hogan?
Everything's cool, man. What's up with you?
Yeah, I got a question. Do you think that Vince McMahon one day in the future might buy TNA like he did WCW?
Oh, man. Well, brother, let me tell you something, Tone Low. Oh, this is